Welcome to AI Peer Review, where we dive straight into the research shaping the future of machine learning.
Today, we're looking at something that's been, well, a major headache in generative video.
Yeah.
Getting good quality beyond just a few seconds. We're talking minutes, not just moments.
Yeah, that 5 or 10-second barrier has felt almost absolute for a long time. We know models like the ones using diffusion transformers, DITs.
Right, DITs. They produce incredible image quality, truly stunning stuff.
But they're not really built for long videos, are they? The whole architecture isn't causal, it's not streaming.
Exactly. Trying to scale DIT for, say, a minute-long video, the compute cost just explodes. You'd have to process the whole thing at once.
So the focus shifted naturally towards these autoregressive models, streaming models.
Yep. They predict the next little bit based on what came before, often using that KV cache, the key value cache, for memory.
Which sounds great for making longer videos, theoretically infinite rollouts.
Right.
But there's always a but.
And it's a big one. Error accumulation. That's been the killer.
And that's exactly what this new research tackles head on. They're calling it self-forcing plus fair.
And the claim is pretty bold. They say they can mitigate that error buildup and scale high-quality video all the way out to 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
4 minutes. That's, what, a 50x jump compared to the baselines they tested against?
It's a huge leap. And maybe the most interesting part, they're doing it without needing massive data sets of actual long videos for training.
Ow.
They're using a strong but short horizon teacher model to essentially teach the student model how to fix its own mistakes when it tries to generate long, messy sequences. It's like built-in quality control.
Okay, so for you listening, if you're technically minded, this matters. It's a potential solution to those really stubborn problems we saw with earlier methods. You know, COSVID, the original self-forcing.
Right, where videos would just degrade, get temporally weird, or the motion would just freeze up entirely after 10 seconds or so.
So our mission today, let's unpack how self-forcing plus actually works. How does it train the model on its own failures? What's this distillation trick? And how do they even measure success at this new scale?
Sounds good. Let's start with the scale problem itself. Why is it so hard?
Okay, so we ruled out DIT for long stuff because of the compute cost, that quadratic complexity.
Yeah.
That pushes us to autoregressive.
But then you hit this wall, this mismatch between how the models are trained and how they're actually used for long generation. Two main failure points.
What's the first one?
It's what they call the temporal mismatch. Your teacher model, the really good one, it's probably only trained on, say, 5-second clips. That's its horizon, let's call it T.
Okay, T equals 5 seconds.
But when you want to generate a video, you need a rollout, N, that's way, way longer than T, maybe minutes long.
So the student model is being asked to do something it was never really trained for. It never saw examples of truly long, coherent sequences during its training phase.
Exactly. It's operating way outside its training distribution. And that leads directly to the second problem, error accumulation.
Ah, the compounding errors.
Yeah. During training, every step is guided by clean data. The teacher basically holds its hand.
No room for error.
Right. But during inference, when you're generating that long 100-second video, the model's output from frame 1 becomes the input context for frame 2, and so on.
So tiny imperfections just build up.
They cascade frame after frame. And that's when you see the quality just nosedive. The video might freeze, become static, or just fall apart visually.
And we saw this in older methods, right, like COSVID.
Definitely.
Yeah.
COSVID had those weird overexposure artifacts. That was partly because of how it tried to handle overlapping frames to maintain consistency.
And the original self-forcing.
That one tended to just stop moving. Quality would collapse, often into a frozen scene or just general darkening beyond maybe 10 seconds.
So the big insight here isn't we need a perfect 4-minute training video.
No, not at all. It's realizing that the short 5-second teacher model, despite its limits, actually contains really valuable information about how to correct local errors.
So you leverage that short-term expertise. How?
You force the student model to generate long candidate videos, maybe 100 seconds long initially, which will inevitably be full of those accumulated errors.
You let it fail, basically.
You let it fail in a controlled way, and then you use the short horizon teacher to show the student, okay, here's how you recover from this specific kind of degraded state.
So it's learning error correction from its own mistakes. Creating a curriculum for resilience.
That's the core idea. Simple, but seems really effective.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics. The paper outlines 3 main technical pieces. First one, backwards noise initialization. Sounds counterintuitive.
It does a bit, yeah. Let's think about the standard problem first. If you just start generating a long video from pure random noise, that noise has no connection to the video history you might already have in your KV cache.
Right, it breaks the temporal flow immediately.
Exactly. Consistency goes out the window. Now, the backwards part here isn't about starting the very first frame. It's about what happens after the student has already generated N frames.
Frames that are probably already starting to degrade due to error accumulation.
Precisely. So you have these N frames, already a bit messy. Then you take their latent representations, the denoised ones, and you actually re-inject noise back into them.
Wait, you add more noise to the already flawed output. Why?
Because you want to train the model specifically on recovery. You're creating examples of sequences that are flawed, degraded by both accumulated errors and this added noise, but importantly, they still retain the underlying temporal structure from the rollout so far.
Ah, okay, so it's not just random noise, it's noise added based on the diffusion schedule, applied to a sequence that's already temporally grounded, albeit flawed.
Exactly. The short teacher can then look at this noisy, error-filled segment and effectively teach the student, here's how you clean this specific mess up and get back to something coherent. It prepares the student for the messy reality of long generation.
That makes sense. It's about teaching resilience to accumulated errors by exposing the model to controlled degradation. Okay, component 2. How does that 5-second teacher actually supervise this process across potentially minutes of video? That's the extended distribution matching distillation, or extended DMD.
Right. Distillation is standard transferring knowledge from teacher to student, but standard DMD is stuck within that short 5-second window, T.
So how do you extend it? How does a 5-second expert edit a 100-second document?
Okay, so the student generates its long, error-filled sequence n frames long, instead of trying to make the whole n-frame sequence match something, which the teacher can't do.
Right, the teacher only knows 5-second perfection.
The method randomly picks a short, continuous chunk, say k frames long, where k is around 5 seconds, like the teacher's horizon, from anywhere within that long n-frame sequence.
So it grabs a random 5-second snippet from the student's potentially 100-second flawed output.
Exactly, and only within that short window does it calculate the distillation loss. It compares the student's distribution in that window to what the teacher thinks a perfect 5-second distribution should look like.
It's like spot checking. The teacher dips in, corrects a small local section, and you do this randomly all over the long sequence.
That's a good way to put it. You're teaching localized repair. The idea, or maybe the assumption, is that if you teach the student to make every possible 5-second chunk look good statistically, then the entire long sequence should become good.
You enforce local quality everywhere, hoping global quality emerges.
Pretty much. They argue any short segment from a valid long video should look statistically like a sample from the distribution of any other valid long video. You're enforcing that property across the whole timeline, using the short teacher as the local judge.
Clever. Okay, third piece. Rolling KV cache consistency. This sounds more like fixing an architectural issue.
It is, fundamentally. The KV cache holds the memory, the context from past frames. The problem was that older methods often used a fixed size cache during training, because training was short.
But then needed a rolling cache during the long inference phase to handle potentially infinite sequences.
Right. And that mismatch between training and inference, how the memory was handled, was likely a hidden source of errors and flickering.
So the fix is just be consistent.
Basically, yes. Use a rolling KV cache during both training and inference.
Seems simple, but probably makes a big difference.
It eliminates that mismatch, simplifies the whole pipeline, and importantly, it helps avoid needing hacks like recomputing overlapping frames, which, as we said, cause problems like overexposure in methods like COSVID.
Okay, so those three components give you local stability and self-correction, but rolling windows, even consistent ones, have this known issue of forgetting things long-term, right?
That's the next challenge. Section 3 in the paper tackles this. You get this gradual drift or loss of long-term memory. An object might disappear behind something for 30 seconds.
And when it comes back, the model has forgotten what it looked like, or even that it existed, or maybe background details subtly shift over time.
Exactly. These long-range temporal inconsistencies creep in. To address that, they brought in a technique from reinforcement learning, actually.
Oh, like RLHF used in LLMs.
Sort of inspired by that, yeah. They used Group Relative Policy Optimization, or GRPO. It's adapted from language model fine-tuning.
And how do you apply RL to video generation smoothness? What's the reward?
The key is the reward signal. They designed an optical flow reward.
Optical flow. that measures motion between frames, right?
Exactly. It calculates how pixels seem to move from one frame to the next. If you have a sudden, unnatural jump, like an object jerking or teleporting, or a scene cut that isn't smooth, the magnitude of the optical flow vectors will spike sharply.
So a big spike in optical flow magnitude means bad transition.
Precisely. That's the signal for a negative reward. The GRPO process then fine-tunes the generation policy to specifically suppress those sharp spikes in optical flow magnitude.
So it's learning to prefer smooth, continuous motion over abrupt changes.
Yeah, if you look at Figure 5 in the paper, they show this effect. Smoothing out those spikes leads to visually smoother, more coherent motion over time. It's like adding a physics constraint via RL.
Very neat. Using RL for perceptual quality.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. But now, how do you prove any of this works if 4 minutes you need the right measuring stick?
And that was another major hurdle they hit. The standard benchmark, VBench, which everyone was using, turned out to be unreliable for these ultra-long videos.
I'll write them out.
They found it was actually weirdly biased towards videos that were degraded. Things like overexposure or other artifacts in the baselines were sometimes getting higher scores on VBench than cleaner videos.
That's not ideal. The benchmark was rewarding failure modes.
Pretty much. So they realized they needed a new way to evaluate, specifically for the kinds of problems long autoregressive generation faces.
Which led them to create visual stability. What is that?
They turned to a powerful multimodal large language model, or MLLM, specifically Gemini 2.5 Pro.
Using an AI to judge the AI's output.
Essentially, yes. Leveraging its strong visual understanding and reasoning, they prompted Gemini very carefully to act like an expert human evaluator.
Asking to look for specific things.
Exactly. Asking it to rate the videos on a 0-100 scale, focusing explicitly on those long video failure modes. Was there overexposure? Did objects flicker or disappear unnaturally? Was there noticeable error accumulation over time?
And did it work? Did the MLLM judgments align with humans?
Remarkably well. They reported something like a 94.2% Spearman's rank correlation with human judgments on 50-second videos across all the methods they tested.
Wow. Okay, that's very high correlation. So visual stability seems like a much more reliable metric for this specific challenge?
It seems so. It directly targets the problems they were trying to solve.
Which brings us nicely to the results. Did Self-Forcing Plus Plus actually perform better using these new metrics?
Dramatically better, especially as the video length increased.
Yeah.
If you look at Table 1, particularly the 50-second results, take dynamic degree. It's meant to measure how much sustained, coherent motion there is. Self-Forcing Plus scored around 55.
And the others? COSVID, original self-forcing?
They were way lower. COSVID around 37, self-forcing around 34. It suggests the baselines were suffering from that motion collapse, things just becoming static.
Okay, and what about the new metric, visual stability?
Even starker difference there. Self-forcing plus hit almost 91 out of 100.
91. And the competitors?
Both COSVID and the original self-forcing were down around 40, less than half the score.
So nearly double the visual stability. That's a huge quantitative gap.
It really is, and the qualitative examples apparently back this up. COSVID still showed overexposure. Self-forcing still had issues with darkening and freezing. Self-forcing plus just seemed much more consistent and artifact-free for far longer.
This all points towards the core finding, right? The training budget scaling idea shown in Figure 6.
Yes, this is maybe the most significant practical discovery. It's not just that the architecture works, it's that how much you train it directly correlates with how long it works for.
Explain that scaling. What happens with different budgets?
Okay, so with a baseline budget, maybe 1x, you get the expected result. Good video for about 5 seconds, then it starts flickering, errors accumulate, quality drops off. Standard failure.
Right.
But then they increased the compute budget specifically for this self-correction training. At 4x the budget, things stayed coherent for longer. At 8x budget.
Better still.
Yeah, they started seeing more detailed backgrounds, sharper objects holding up over longer durations. The self-correction was getting stronger.
And the punchline.
The punchline is the 25x budget, with 25 times the compute invested in this self-correction training loop. That's when they successfully generated the full 255-second video.
The 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
Exactly, with apparently negligible quality loss across that entire duration. And interestingly, that length used up almost all, like 99.9% of the model's positional embedding capacity. They pushed it to its architectural limit.
So the big takeaway isn't just, here's a new trick. It's, if you invest enough compute in teaching the model to fix itself, you can achieve significantly longer, high-quality video generation.
That seems to be the core message. Scaling the training budget dedicated to self-correction is a viable path. It potentially bypasses the need for massive, hard-to-get data sets of real long videos.
Which could really change how people approach training these models. Just invest more compute in the self-correction phase.
Think about it. A year or two ago, a clean 4-minute continuous AI video sequence felt like science fiction for these kinds of models. This paper suggests a concrete path towards it.
Okay, so it's a breakthrough. But no research is perfect. What are the limitations they acknowledge?
They're upfront about a couple of things. First, the training is slower. Because the student has to generate these long, flawed rollouts as part of the training loop itself, it just takes more time than standard supervised training.
Makes sense. And the other limitation.
It still struggles with true, very long-term memory. That issue we talked about, objects being occluded for a long time and then reappearing incorrectly, or subtle scene drifts over minutes. The rolling cache and GRPO help, but they don't fully solve the long-term consistency problem.
Which points directly to future work, I suppose.
Absolutely. How do you build better memory for these things, for potentially infinite rollouts? They suggest a couple of avenues.
Wait, what?
Maybe techniques like quantizing the information stored in the KV cache. Compressing the memory representations might prevent subtle drift over very long sequences.
Interesting. Less precision, but maybe more stability.
Potentially. Or, perhaps more fundamentally, incorporating separate, explicit long-term memory modules. Something beyond just the rolling KV cache, designed specifically to handle information over much longer timescales, like tracking objects through occlusion or maintaining narrative consistency.
So the future isn't just bigger models. It's smarter memory management, making the model aware of its own history, its own potential failures over much longer spans.
That seems to be the direction this points, making the model not just a generator, but its own persistent editor, constantly correcting drift and maintaining coherence.
It really shifts the perspective. If compute scaling and self-correction unlock minute-scale video, what happens when these ideas are applied to even longer forms? Can you maintain plot, character arcs, narrative coherence for, say, an hour?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This work cracks open the door to thinking about temporal consistency at a scale we couldn't really address before, moving from just coherent motion to potentially coherent stories. That's the really exciting frontier this research helps illuminate.